You are listening to the Real Men Feel Show with Andy Grant. Real Men Feel encourages men to allow and express all of their emotions. Despite what you may have been taught, all emotions do serve you. Real Men Feel is committed to engaging in discussions that most men aren't having, but you don't need to be a man to join us. The Real Men Feel Show is produced weekly for your growth and enjoyment. Listen to us on podcast platforms including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and many more. You can also watch the show on YouTube by visiting realmenfeel.org/YouTube. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or subscribe on iTunes by visiting realmenfeel.org/iTunes. You can follow us on Twitter at realmenfeelorg and at facebook.com/realmenfeelshow. All links mentioned in each episode are in the show notes found on the blog at realmenfeel.org. Real Men Feel is brought to you by the Good Men Project. Visit goodmenproject.com for more of the conversations no one else is having. Your reviews, comments, feedback, and participation are welcome during the live show and anytime in our Facebook group, on Twitter, or at realmenfeel.org. Now, let's get into this week's show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Real Men Feel. This is your host, Andy Grant, and today we're talking about violence and specifically how to prevent violence, right? It's not about, hey, let's go get in a fight. Not talking about that sort of a violence. We're talking about how to prevent it because, you know, if you see, you don't even need to see the news anymore. If you just are on social media at all, you know, you're seeing far too many stories of shootings happening at churches, at concerts, at workplaces, at schools, and it's just far too common. And I've seen lots of workplace leaders and school principals and people like that say after the fact of an incident at their place that they just didn't know any way that they could prevent this. So today, my guest, attorney Stewart Silverman, who is a founding member of the Workplace Violence Prevention Institute, well, Stewart says workplace violence is preventable. And I don't think he means by arming everybody, like some people have suggested, but, you know, let's find out. So welcome to Real Men Feel, Stewart.
Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure, absolute pleasure to be here. And no, we're not talking about arming. And in fact, we're not even talking about disarming. We're not, the whole Second Amendment conversation, this is the sum total of it right here. It doesn't involve anything that we talk about, period.
Excellent, excellent. Well, good. Well, then that must make it easier to engage with people and have people, you know, take some of your proposals and run with them.
Absolutely. And we tell them, listen, and it's not a matter of you have to be of one view, another view, or whatever. What we're really talking about here is very simple, is that if you take the events after they occur and reverse engineer them, and you get back to a time before they occurred, you're going to see a whole host of warning signs. And based upon those warning signs or clues, those are things that in the workplace setting, if it's an employee on employee thing, you can, for the most part, prevent to reduce the risk. And in the school setting, when I'm talking about the mass school shootings, for the most part, you can see signs or things out there that, for the most part, you can reduce the risk. That's what we're talking about.
Cool. So you're primarily, you're a labor attorney.
Been practicing for a little over 30 years down here in South Florida. Most of it is labor and employment and litigation. But, you know, when you're advising companies and you're dealing with companies on employment issues, how to deal with employees and things of that nature, they realize that you've got a lot of responsibility as a company to your employee, and you've got an opportunity to, by how you do things, to create safe workplaces. Not only that, you have a federal duty under OSHA, under that federal agency, to provide a safe workplace to all employees. So this is just part and parcel of that.
Wow, I didn't realize. So I guess I was assuming that, oh, maybe you were personally involved in some tragedy that had you redirect. I never really thought of the issue of workplace violence as being kind of in the normal realm of a labor attorney.
It's actually, it's one of those things that we stop and think about. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but we do see this. We see that when companies don't have to spend their time on, let's call it extraneous things, they can do what they do best, which is, you know, run a business, do a profit. Picture a school scene, for example. This is the easier one. Teachers are there to teach, and hopefully students are there to learn. Hopefully. When you got to get bogged down in other things and doing, unfortunately, in this day and age, you know, you've got to do active shooter training and what if this and what if that, and now you're spending time on those issues. It's taken away from your education time. It's no different in the workforce. You want to be there, whatever you're doing, making widgets, selling widgets, doing a service, whatever, as opposed to being bogged down in other things. The more you're able to focus on that and have policies and procedures in place to deal with everything else, the better you're going to be, no matter what that policy procedure is. This is just part of it.
So are more companies and schools trying to be proactive and looking at strategies, putting things in place these days?
I really wish they were. From a company perspective, I really wish they were. We have a guy who was involved with us. This guy's an unbelievable person. You may have heard him. His name is Felix Nader. He was a postal inspector in the post office for a long period of time. He was there way back in the times when the term "going postal" had a meaning of a guy walking into the post office and shooting up a place. And he and his team, was a group of people who got together and really took that term out of our vocabulary to some degree. He has a saying, which is a very cute saying: when there's an active shooting going on, there's a failed policy. Meaning, when that supervisor is sitting there under his desk because this former disgruntled employee is coming in with a gun looking for him, there's some prevention that could have happened beforehand, whether it was in the process of, why do we even hire this nut job to begin with? Or how can we expose him to all our employees? Or how did we get rid of him? Did we just say, "You're out of here, bub, out of Louis," and send him an email? Or did we do something to sort of redirect him as he was leaving so he can go, have an income somewhere else? Those are the sort of things that companies can do. That's just the thumbnail. But within that, there's a lot of things companies can do with regards to how they hire employees, how they fire employees, how they separate themselves from them. That'll go a long way to reduce the risk of workplace violence. And unfortunately, I have to say, in the school setting, we look at things the same way, meaning let's look at these massive school shootings that have gone on since Columbine. And unfortunately, what goes on is there's the same pattern that goes on. So if you find those risk things out there and you start seeing them, you can start preventing them. The FBI just came out with a study recently with regards to school shootings, and it says something to the effect, the number might be slightly off, but 80% of them, somebody knows about them ahead of time and they're well planned. Meaning the guy's been on the internet, the guy's got an internet trail, he's been buying things and stuff of that nature. So there are clues out there. If we, you and I, as just regular individuals, get clued in as to how to look for those clues, that can go a long way to help prevent a lot of the stuff that goes on.
All right. Well, then so what are some of the warning signs that say, an average employee at work, not even HR, what can they look for at the workplace? What's a warning sign?
So with regards to workers, it's a matter of, number one, the two biggest things are, how are you hiring people? A lot of times, we've got an opening, somebody's left or whatever, and let's get somebody with a pulse to fill that seat. I mean, they got a live body, they got a pulse, they're breathing. Okay, great, we got somebody, wonderful. It's not a matter of background checking or things of that nature. I'm not going to get into those issues, things of that nature. One of the best indicators of performance is past performance, right? Past performance is always a good indicator of future performance. What we suggest with regards to hiring people is, don't just look for the live body. Do what what a lot of people call behavioral-based interviews. Questions. That is, how would you respond in a specific topic? Have you been stressed out before at work when you've had to type something and your boss says, do this right now? How'd you handle that situation? The person goes, it's never happened. You go, I think it has. You just never dealt with it. If they have an answer, great. So you want to, when you prepare for an interview, one of the things we suggest is look at the knowledge, skills, and ability, that subset that needs to come to that particular job. Design questions that deal with that in that particular way, that are behavioral based. How do you deal in this situation and things of that nature? That's going to tell you a lot more about a candidate than, oh, I see you worked at that restaurant for the last 2 years. What was that like? Oh, that was nice. I once had a person come to me, wanted me to look at employment law. So I looked at their resume and I looked at it and I said, wait a minute. I know you're not traveling in Europe for the last 9 months. I mean, that's just impossible. You're not of the age that you're traveling at Europe and what have you. And so the person says, well, listen, I really worked in a strip club, but what do you want me to put down? But if we just do our normal thing, you ask them, oh, you traveled through Europe. Did you go to Paris? Yeah. Did you see the Eiffel Tower? Yeah. It was nice. Oh, yeah, it was really nice. I mean, so we've got to do more than that.
And it seems very unlike. I can't think of like a behavioral question to be asked that someone could answer that would really be with the violence shown, even if they have a history of it. Like,
So
aren't most people do have enough control that, oh, I need to impress someone in an interview, so I'm not going to talk about how I freak out or lose my temper?
you're absolutely right. That's a really good point. But you're going to see where they're going, or you could get an idea of if they're a good fit for your other people there. And it may be like, oh, that boss really. They may just say something that slips, like, oh, that boss really ticked me off, or say something negative about the previous workplace, or something like that. That sets up something. You're right. Generally, people are not going to show violent violent tendencies and things of that nature. And if they do, they're like, you're never going to let them in the door. It's a matter of them being able to get along with other people. Those are the things. Or the risk factor that may show up is that if the person really seems to be down, disgruntled, or like this could be a problem. I remember working at a place many years ago, and there was a person who came in, and on day two, the office manager came to me and said, "Can you do me a favor? Can you follow this person home and see where they live?" I said, "What?" This is a law firm we're talking about, I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, we had her fill out her new hire paperwork, and she refused to give us her home address." And I said, "What's the resume say?" "Well, the resume doesn't say home address." I said, "Well, tell her you need it." She says, "I can't give it." I said, "Oh, hello, what's going on here?" And so I said, "I'm not going to follow somebody home. That's just crazy." But I did find out where the person lived. Um, it was pretty easy. The person drove a very unique vehicle, so it was easy to sort of spot the vehicle. But the person did not last more than 2 months, and they were worried that was the person going to come back afterwards. This person, they realized the person was not exactly totally with it. So those are the sort of things you want to see, like not a matter of violence, but is the person with it, not with it? Are they able to get along with everybody? Are they going to be the person that when they come in there, they're going to be totally ostracized from everybody else, and now you're going to have an unhealthy work environment, and maybe they think people are getting up on them, they got to get even with them. Who knows? So those are the types of things you're sort of looking for. How they're going to fit in with the team, before they get there.
And so it's kind of, especially at times like this when with a low unemployment rate, it can companies can be quick to just take kind of the first warm body. Oh, good, we got someone interested. They seem to be able to get some basic concepts and perhaps speak English. So let's put them to work. So it's really take some time, not just yes or no questions. Get to know people. Ask behavioral based questions. So I find out their past responses to different stimuli.
Absolutely correct. There's an old saying, and it's true. It's hire slow, fire fast, and it really applies here. I more so agree with the hire slow portion. The fire fast, no, I don't agree with, and that's just because I do employment law. If we look at the termination or the separation process as the last best defense for an employer to avoid an employment claim, you'll take a little more time to dot the I's, cross the T's, make sure all the paperwork is in order, and you know how you're going to steer this person away from the company, as opposed to just get him out of here now.
Yeah, I like that. I've never, and not being a lawyer, not being in HR, but to properly steer someone away from the company, not you're fired, not you're laid off, not just get out of here, but really give them a direction.
You want to give them a direction, because here's what happens. Unfortunately, listen, I know the drill. Come Monday morning, I'm going to be ready by about 7:30, 7:45 in the morning to get a call from somebody I never heard of before. Why? Because what happened was they got fired on Friday. What happened to them on Friday? They got an email saying, "Don't show up on Monday." Nice personal thing or something of that nature. Or maybe they got an email and somebody said, "Hey, we're here to walk you out now." And they have been fuming all weekend. Now, in this day and age, if all they've been doing is fuming all weekend, I'm a happy camper. We're a much better society. But if they said, "Oh, that's it, I got to do something about it," and they go find somebody and shoot them up, that's another story. But what's going to happen is when somebody's going to get fired like that, unfortunately, they're going to be fuming about it. If rather than giving them the chance to fume and stew and all this other stuff, if we said, "Listen, it didn't work out. We've got a package here for you. There's going to be income and things of that nature. There's going to be opportunities, stuff of that to redirect them," the fall is a lot easier. And for those reasons, I also tell companies that don't do this on Friday.
Yeah,
Do it Tuesday, do it Wednesday. I also suggest to them, and I've got a couple starting to listen to me, is don't let the supervisor do it, because the person is going to look at it as, yeah, that person's always had out to get me, or whatever. Um, have some neutral, respectful person in the company who's like the chief firer, for lack of a better term. Let him or her deliver the bad news. And I'll tell you why. It's going to take the personality out of it. And the person can say, we've had all these concerns, and they came to me, and, we thought about it, and we really did, and it's just not working out. They can do it in a way that takes the sting out of it. As I've seen all too often in cases where the supervisor does it, and then the supervisor has a need to defend him or herself with the employee, and then they get into a whole shouting match, or it might be even worse from the employment attorney point of view, an email match. So there's a record of it.
Yeah.
That then goes to the EEOC or some agency or some judge or what have you. Look what he said to me when he terminated me. He said it. No, I didn't mean it that way. Good luck at that point in time to say you didn't mean it that way. Right. So you get that disinterested person in the company who doesn't have need to defend him or herself to do it. It can redirect it. It can be a lot smoother. It can be a lot easier. And then hopefully they're on their way, redirected to a better life somewhere else.
Cool, because I would have, as you're describing it, it's like, oh, so it needs to be more personal, but no, it can be too personal. So it's better to have someone that's not personally involved, that just gives them the bad news and helps them take the next step.
And it depends on who it is. It can be personal in the sense that, let's say the job isn't working out. You work at a place where the person is too qualified, or they're really good, but you don't need that particular position or something of that nature. So a personal thing there is, listen, you're really good. I think you would do really good at A, B, or C. And I can talk to people at A, B, and C about you working there. That's one thing. If you have that situation you're able to do, that's one thing. But if it's the regular situation and you can't do that, then the non-personal way is sometimes best. The other thing too is you want to have all those benefits figured out too. Are they going to get employment? Are they going to get medical? How long are they going to get it? Things like that. So when they go home and let's assume this is the wife who's getting terminated, and the husband's going to, from the mindset of, okay, how much is this costing us? What happened to our benefit? Their answer's right there. So you want to have those so they can tell the significant other, the spouse, the family, about the money situations, and nobody has to worry about that.
Cool. So in every sort of instance of workplace violence where it was someone who was fired and they come back with a gun and they're really taking it personally and they're seeking revenge, so many times people say, oh, I knew this person was going to do that.
Right.
So what can a company do when they have an employee that does seem prone to violence, has kind of made threats, and it's time to separate from that person? What do they do in those volatile situations?
Yeah, those are good questions. What we sometimes see is the companies don't do anything. And then when they don't do anything, then the person is, coming back because they just haven't figured out what to do. Or what sometimes has happened is you left the person there because they're volatile because you're scared of figuring out what to do. So with the company there, if they realize there's going to be violence, they've got a duty to all their other employees as well. And they've got to fulfill that, the best way possible. So if it means that, the person is terminated in a setting where there's nobody else around, so be it. If the person is terminated in a way that if they're in a building where there's security, you've got to let security know ahead of time. And what's happened in cases, unfortunately, there's one in Pennsylvania some years back. There's a jury trial where a lady got terminated. She goes down to her car. She broods about it for about 15 minutes. And she says, how can they do this to me? I've worked here for, I forget the number of years, 12 years, 15 years, whatever. She takes a gun, which she happens to have in her car. She walks right back in through security because either A, they didn't know that she was terminated, or B, they were like asleep at the wheel and she went by them. However, somebody sees the gun but doesn't call the company. She goes up there and shoots 5 people. And I think the estate of whatever sued, and $70 million later in judgment or whatever, that was there. So you're going to have to take proactive steps, whether it's security, whether it's police, or to make sure that's done in a scenario where nobody else is around. But what you've got to do is alert people. Let me give you a tragic case. This is one that in our group we know personally. There was a girl working at a supermarket, food store in Wisconsin. She had a sexual harassment claim against a coworker. The coworker was told of it, was told that she was the complainant, and based upon that, the company fired this guy. They didn't tell anybody about it. He calls up the next day, says, "Hey, when does she get off work?" They tell her. She walks out after work, and he's waiting in the parking lot, and shoots her twice, and this 24-year-old is dead.
Wow.
I mean, so the companies need to do things to take protective steps to protect their employees, and they've got to think about it before they do it. This is one of the reasons why I say, I disagree with them. I say, fire fast. I disagree with that portion. You got to think about these things before you actually do it, and have a plan in place.
And so we're talking about all different signs and the hiring and the firing. Have you ever heard of a case where there was a shooting or some type of workplace violence where just warning signs weren't there? Is that a possible thing?
If it's firstly, we're talking about employee against employee, a former employee, coming in. There are workplace violence cases all the time with no warning signs. That's just like, let's say a guy comes into a convenience store and the convenience store is killed. It's a robbery or something of that nature. In employee on employee ones, not only generally are there warning signs, but there's ridiculous anger. For example, the guy who shoots somebody's cases from point blank range 46 times. 46 times. There's a case in Texas. The supervisor is still holding the paperwork for him to sign that he's being terminated. He went out to his car, got a gunshot 46 times. The interesting thing, the amazing thing, is he missed 20 of those times. Now, you really got to be angry to shoot. That is the severe rage we see with these things. Ridiculous rage, generally, that you see with this whatsoever. There are times where the warning sign is delayed. For example, there was a case in Orlando, this made the news about 20 years ago, where a guy went to his former accounting office and shot and killed, I think 7 people were involved. I think 1 was killed, 5 injured, or the other way around. This person was terminated a year beforehand. Now, the company, by all accounts, knew that this guy was a nut job, by all accounts. And as a typical accounting firm would do, everything was by the book. So it was, you didn't work out, sorry to hear that, here's your severance, you're out the door, bye. They don't hear from him for 9 months. But he couldn't get a job in 9 months because, for whatever. So he blamed them for that, and he came back 9 months later. That's one where they probably could have and should have been thinking about. This guy is nutty enough. We're going to have to handle this a little bit differently. But it ends up that, so it made news when it occurred, and also made news about a year ago here in Florida because the guy the shooter was convicted. It was on appeal, and he died while in jail. So so you want to say they're a happy ending, so be it.
Yeah. So I mean, so what could a company have done? Like, 9 months. Like everyone in the company could have turned over. No one even remembers that person, or you think, well, we're in the clear. Like, like when can you exhale if you think it was a potential violent person?
That's a good question. It's a good question. Again, it's how he was treated. He's had that blame that was slowly building apparently over 9 months that they didn't do enough to help him when he left. Don't know if it's there. Don't know if it wasn't there. But again, just maybe it could have been handled that they gave him a little additional severance or some outsourced treating or things of that nature, as opposed to your services were very nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So it can really, not just for a company to be supportive of past employees and to help them make the next step, it can really be a defensive act to keep everyone else safe, to make sure people have packages. It can't just be, look at the budget, or, we're going down the tubes, we got to cut everybody, there are no benefit packages for anybody. That's really got to be a kind of a dangerous place.
Well, again, it can be, but if there's no benefit package because it's just the size of the company or things of that nature, so there's what I call, the non-monetary things you can do. There's outsourced training. We can put you in touch with some people or things of that nature, showing that there's some caring or things of that nature. Or, for example, the insurance is paid for through a period of time. Keep it on through that period of time. Sorry, we don't have money because we're going through a hard time. Everybody's going through it. But again, we can talk to people. We can direct you in certain areas or things of that nature. We're not going to fight the unemployment. Let them know ahead of time. Uh, Things like that. So it doesn't. Again, if there's money, that's great. If there's no money, explain why there's no money. Not because it's him, because it's nothing to do with him. It has to do with the company, and they want to help out to get him or her, best moving forward. Again, what I call is like redirect. In other words, the anger's not on him, but we're on your side. We're helping you. This is a good thing.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So let's shift to schools to focus on, because I assume they're going to be different. Students aren't getting hired and fired, and that it just so what sort of things can prevent school shootings?
So let's break these down. If it's what I call your stupid thing, the sixth grader who shows up on the bus with a knife, that's then that's a metal detector issue or something of that nature. The person who gets angry and goes to get a gun and comes back to school with that's a couple issues there. What's the kid doing with a gun? How to get a gun? Again, those are the things I'm not totally dealing with, because those have a bunch of other issues going on there as well. We're talking about the large things. We're talking about in my neighboring town over here, some next to Parkland, Florida. Marjorie Stone Douglas. We're talking about Santa Fe this year, the school in Texas, in the end of middle of May, where a person went in, killed 10, injured a whole slew of others as well. We're dealing with things going on all the way back to Columbine. So we've also, and mostly through the head of the Workplace Violence Prevention Institute, a person by the name of Kathleen Bonchek. So what she's done is also reverse engineered these, and you start seeing the scariest patterns develop. And here's what they are. These Columbine guys, and I don't refer to shooters by name. I don't personally. I don't need to glorify these things. So therefore, as a shooter, alleged perpetrator, or something of that nature, I don't refer to names. The victims we should, but not the shooter. Once for identity, that's it. And that's important for another reason why. Because what happens is you get these shooters, and now you get these kids out there who want to emulate them. You've got this guy who's, sitting waiting trial in Parkland, and he's got letters coming in from girls who want to have his baby, and, people who want to emulate him and stuff like that. It's crazy. But you've got these guys from Columbine, and Columbine was a shooting incident that killed many, and it was supposed to be a lot worse because it was actually a bombing incident, and the bombs never went off. But the idea was supposed to be, bomb here, kids run to somewhere else, shoot, bomb somewhere else, they're now funneled through an area and shoot and whatever. And what they did, reverse engineering it, found that, well, these guys were able to get bomb materials legally, and they're able, they and then people since then have sort of emulated them, being as follows. The shooters in Columbine wore these long trench coats. You start seeing, the two shootings this year where the shooters wear these long trench coats. Even though the school rules about what you can wear, what you can't wear, nobody in Texas, at least an area of Houston, which is hot and humid like it is here in Florida, but they've got more humidity, should be walking around in May with a long trench coat, on. There's certain pro-Russia, when I mean pro-Russia, like USSR Russia, Soviet Union, not current Russia, pro-Nazi paraphernalia that that the early shooters got into, and these other ones since then have copied that by wearing things or stuff of that nature. There are now, in this day and age, some of these, or many of these, have got an online record of threats, of things they've looked at, and stuff of that nature that's out there. There's also, if you remember the movie Toy Story, so the kid in the first one, Sid,
Yep.
who was right, the kid was always wanted to take the dolls and destroy them. So picture Sid, but instead of doing that to dolls, would do it to live animals. Okay, that's what you also see of some of these shooters as well. Sort of what I just refer to as the Sid personality with live animals. So you picture that sort of personality with that. That's sort of the profile that you're seeing. But now you picture that Sid, instead of wearing the black shirt, He's also got this trench coat that goes down past his knees, and he's got some paraphernalia on, and he's got a website or internet presence that's talking about this stuff as well. Again, not to pick on Toy Story, I love the movie, but use it as an example that we can visualize.
Great.
So the idea is that, and this should be now a team effort, meaning it's one thing for the school to do, but again, teachers are there to teach, students are hopefully there to learn. It's administrative, whether it's guidance counselors or things of that nature, need to be involved here. Also, schools have resource officers, and they have that in more sense. They have guidance counselors, resource officers, and they also have police who are resource officers. I spent some time working at a firm where we represented police officers back in the 90s and 2000s or so, and we heard the term then that was then in the vogue, and it's coming back. It's called community policing, meaning that the police go out and talk to businesses and say, before things occur, and talk about security issues and what can we do to help you and how can the streets be better and stuff of that nature. If we get the local police, and again, every school is different. The school in New Jersey is going to be different from the one in Massachusetts, the one in Utah, the one in Illinois, just because the town is different. The school might be of a large rural setting. Somewhere is going to be, the areas are going to be different, but the threats are sort of going to be the same. And whether it's the police, whether it's the school, whether it's a whole group gets together and can start getting together and they start noticing these things, then we can go a long way to doing it. Because unfortunately, some of these mass school shootings have all been the same paradigm, which is it's a bombing shooting incident following in the mold of Columbine, which the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas and the Santa Fe ones really look like, they are. It's not, some kid got up and had some great idea one day and he's going to go get guns and shoot a school. No, this is well thought out beforehand. It's well planned. There's an internet trail. People are going to know about it. There are going to be warning signs. And we got to be able to tap in, see what the patterns are, find these warning signs ahead of time, and then do it. There was a great line from the governor of Florida, spent 2 weeks down here when the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas thing was going on. And he met with guy attended every funeral possible to go to, but he made a line that that really stuck with me. He says, "We cannot rely upon the federal government to save us." He says, "They've shown it here that that can't be done." He says, "We've got to come up on our own with ways to do things," and that's what we need to do. Whether it's the town that's involved, whether it's the community that's involved, the county, whatever level it is, we've got to come up with ways of finding these things and preventing them.
So is it as simple as adding more metal detectors? Is that a way to prevent these things from happening?
The metal detectors are going to deal with the sixth grader brings the knife, the kid who goes home to gets the gun. That's going to deal with the metal detectors. But we've added metal detectors to courthouses, and we still have incidents that occur there. We've added metal detectors to airports, and we still have 9/11 that occurred after metal detectors were added there. Metal detectors are only going to deal with those particular issues. We want to deal with prevention, where you see the person online with some presence beforehand. You can nip that before he's even cut the power to the school or throwing bombs somewhere, that you're not going to have to, you have to worry about the metal detector.
And do you have any suggestions for, how students can feel safer and more empowered in their schools?
Yeah, this is a big one. This is a catch-22. I'll tell you why. We want a situation where if a student knows something, the student says something. But on the flip side, you don't want a situation where 5 students gang up on somebody, and quote unquote rat them out just because, and then it goes the other way, because kids will be kids.
Yeah.
So you've got to find the fine line there. And a lot of people have struggled with this issue for a long time. So there's no one great solution there. However, having said that, we have this idea out there in some settings: if you see something, say something. Meaning, if you see a suspicious package or something of that nature, say something. And as an aside, I've had the privilege recently to travel through, through Newark Airport. And they have an interesting poster there. They have a picture of a Port Authority officer. You see the guy in full gear and whatever, and you can do the visual, meet, Officer Jones. He's got plenty of experience in order to deal with any threat. And then the next picture is a teenager or a simple looking traveler, and so does Jane. and so does Bob. Meaning, if you see something suspicious, we've got the same ability to do that as an officer to say something. And I think what would be great is if we can reach that level where we come up with these signs and you can tell us, hey, you see the kid in the trench coat? Point that out to the guidance counselor. That's all. We're not looking to rat somebody out. We're not looking on to pick on a particular person. You see the guy with the Nazi paraphernalia, say something to the guidance counselor or somebody in the school who's in charge of that sort of stuff. Just see that, say that, keep it simple, and we're all focused on one particular thing. We're not asking the kids to be like, oh my goodness, what does the person, they're about to pull something out of their backpack. What are they pulling out of their backpack? Oh, it's lunch.
Yeah.
You can't get to that point where they're so scared and things of that nature. But if you see the one thing and we give them what the one thing is that's out of place, the trench coat, and when it's 95 degrees outside, and they're wearing this long trench coat or what have you. The kid who comes in with the dead animals. The kid who has a writing project says, I can't wait to write about my heroes from Columbine or something of that nature. Once we give them those particular signs and they see that and they can say that, that's great. That's what we should be trying to do. That should be looking to do.
So instead of just spotting something and you think, oh, what a weird kid, I'm not going to be friends with him, it's really like, wait, maybe I should let someone in charge know about this as well.
Yeah, it depends how what's weird is weird, but right, let somebody in charge know. And again, it'd be great if it all trickled down, so we're all looking for those particular things. Again, like I said, like at the airport. Yeah, I was. So last year I was traveling in Israel. I was on a train in Jerusalem, and a person got off the train and left a backpack behind. That person was not more than 3 steps off the train before 5 people were on that backpack to figure out what the story with that backpack was. Now, it was innocent, and somebody else, yo, you forgot your, oh yeah, I forgot my bag. But in those few seconds, there was, oh my God, what's in the backpack? What's in the back? Hang on.
Yeah.
So you saw something suspicious, you do something. And that's what we're asking here. But show us that, but give us that particular sign to look for. That's what we're trying to do. Come up with those particular things we're looking for. Again, not the kid who's like, out to lunch today because maybe he was on some medication that he's supposed to be taking for something and it got tweaked and he's not doing good. Maybe he's got a head cold. Maybe he's got some problem going on at home. That doesn't mean he's going to be the next school shooter. But if he comes in with some other signs that looks like other school shooters in the past or stuff of that nature, you go, okay, maybe somebody needs to talk to him. Maybe some adult needs to go see what's going on here.
So students really need to be educated about these signs and told what to look for and give them permission to talk about it to others.
Right. But if you make the signs so simple, again, like the suspicious backpack in the airport, you do it like the trench coat in 95-degree weather, then it's so simple that, even the 3rd grader can do it.
Yeah. So really, it doesn't need to be that, but so really shouldn't be some, annual class assembly about how to spot shooters. It's much more subtle and just posters, just, not to scare people more, but just let them know some of the basic signs.
Right. Again, you don't want to post it in school because then the school shooter says, well, okay, I'll leave the trench coat at home.
So then where does that information belong then?
Right. So again, you want to make people aware of things, but again, I think there's ways to broach it with kids on a kid level that's appropriate that's appropriate for them. The teachers also in this day and age, unfortunately, but fortunately, do get training on issues as well. And I think, at least here in Florida, I think every school's going to go through, for lack of a better term, an active shooter training. In other words, it's called freeze tag. We're going to freeze against the wall. Whatever it is that we think, whatever the police say right now is appropriate for you guys to do. That could change next week. That can change next month. That can change next year is what they think is appropriate. But
is prevention part of those drills before it becomes that? Like all the prevention steps you're talking about, are those part of any training right now?
I don't think they do. I mean, schools still get fire drills. When was the last time a kid was killed in a fire in a school in the U.S.? I think it's been like 50 years or something like that. But we still have fire drills and stuff like that nature. But we don't deal in school with fire prevention. We deal with that by watching, Smokey Bear commercials and things of that nature. So we have an idea of it. And maybe, by the way, that is the eventual answer, is that the federal government steps in. I saw something posted recently, which somebody has a great idea, which is, in schools we have these IEPs for kids who've got special needs. We've got individual educational plans for them, and teachers and guidance counselor, whatever, are very careful to dot their I's, cross their T's on this, and what have you. And maybe if they'd implement this sort of idea here as well for the troubled kid, as a sign as well, people will start really waking up and realize it's preventable, as opposed to, oh my gosh, we're going to have to harden schools and have all these additional layers of security and have clear backpacks. So the teenage girl is going to be embarrassed if it's that time of the month and she has to walk in with a clear backpack, or something of that nature. Or I guess you can't surprise anybody in school with anything anymore. And if you're really carrying in peanuts, we're going to know about it. We've got to get the common sense control over this and figure out how to deal with this on a level. But in my gut, I think at the end it's going to boil down to a local thing, because every town is different. Every school has its own personality.
Interesting stuff. So I mentioned that you're a founding member of the Workplace Violence Prevention Institute. So what exactly is that?
So it is a group that's dedicated. It's dedicated. The idea is we're out to educate. We originally started to educate companies, employers, businesses, governments about ideas of prevention with regards to employee on employee workplace violence. And the way we did it was, we looked at really the two main ways, and sort of touched upon them, are in the hiring process and in the separation process. Those are the two best ways. Let's put it like this: you don't let anybody through the front door of your house. Offices shouldn't be the same way. You just can't let anybody in as the employee. There's a whole bunch of things to do there, but it's sort of transformed into concern that the schools is pretty much the same thing. Especially seeing that, I said, in these mass shootings, you see the same sort of warning signs over and over again. In that sense, there are tons. Same idea, parallel idea. There are tons of signs that are out there that unfortunately the shooters are leaving off. That in this day and age, if properly traced, could help reduce the risk of it. Unfortunately, we've got to the point where if you hear the term active shooter, or if you hear the term school shooting, we immediately panic and put the TV on or put the internet on or what have you, to follow it. And we've got to get to the point where school shooting is something that we realize we can do things to prevent, or school attacks, or things, because again, a lot of these were bombing things that just went awry. Fortunately, in that sense, because it could have been a lot worse. If you picture some of your scenes from, I think in Europe in the past few years, there are a couple of terrorist attacks. The one in Nice where the guy plowed down with a vehicle, but there's also an airport in Belgium, I think, where the guy had a series of bombs that he threw to direct people to one area. Some of these school shootings were tried to be like that. The bombs just never went, which was, thank goodness for little things. But in that sense. But these things could be. That's what some of these guys have been trying to do, and these are the things we're going to try to prevent.
So, is the institute? You just working in Florida, or are you working across the country, or?
One of the things we're doing is we're actually working right now, not only in Florida, but working with a lot of parents in the Santa Fe school area. But one of the things we're trying to do is really trying to take this, if I can say this right, locally but nationally, meaning that it's something that can be done everywhere but across the country. And one of the things that we come up now is like a 3-on-3 initiative. Person commits to do 3 acts by the end of the year. Let's go to a school board meeting and just say, hey, what are we doing about prevention of it? Just raise the issue. Just raise the issue that way. It's all we're asking. And we're getting, to come up with 3 acts and to tell 3 people. And we're trying to, take this across, the country, getting people from different states to sign up. And so far, we've gotten people from 17 states and the District of Columbia to sign up. So 18 out of quote unquote 51 so far is pretty good. So we're it's only been going on for a few weeks, but we're like, we're getting there. Sort of a little debate, which of the Carolinas goes first, which of the Dakotas goes first. They're both still open. So if you're out there watching from any of those and you want to jump in, go right ahead. But, sometimes, and all it takes sometimes is just top of mind awareness. If you go to the school board or the back to school night or what have you, and you say to the teacher, what are you guys doing about this? And they hem in the hall, you realize there's nothing. They realize we've been working with the local police and things of that nature. And they come up with, we can't tell you everything, but we've changed things dramatically. That's something else. I have a daughter who teaches in school, and I saw this locally that after the Parkland thing, the mayor of the town in Boca Raton came out the next day pretty much and said, I want a police officer in every school in the city, period. And what that has apparently transformed to is not only is he in the school, but he's in the school, meaning looking around the grounds, realizing where the school is, realizing other things that he knows that the school didn't know, like are there high speed in the area? Are there crimes in the area? Are there drugs in the area? Things of that nature. So this partnership has been working itself to make a lot of these schools a lot, you know, risk-free from other things as well. And that should only, just continue, which could be, in some cases, a good thing of it. That's all part of just the idea of community policing, that they're out there looking around the scenario, looking and saying, okay, we can make the place safer by doing the following. Oh, your bushes are too high. Let's trim. That's an issue in South Florida always. Um, because people can hide behind and things of that nature. We don't have a clear view. But they come up with other ways to really enhance the school and keep the school safe from other possible, threats that are out there. So those are always good things. That's why I talk about the team effort that's needed. But different areas of the country are going to have different needs. I went to law school in South Jersey, and South Jersey is a patchwork of very small towns. But each of those towns has two things: their own post office and their own school. So the personality of one town is going to be similar to the other, but it's its own school and its own police and its own whatever, and they're going to be involved in that few block radius of the school. Now the schools, again, since the towns are small, the schools are really have only one entrance or two entrances to begin with. So it's not like some of these, in the Midwest we see, or so in Santa Fe, a wide open campus where there's so many different ways of getting into. So again, the needs are going to be different based upon the town, the geographics and the demographics.
Cool. And so I guess when I thought of having a police officer in every school, it was more just a guy standing at the door. But you're really saying no, they're really patrolling the school. So it's a community policing effort in the school. So they're getting to know students. They're preventing other crimes, making the whole environment safe. It's not just about shootings.
From the police perspective, absolutely, yeah. They're doing. Again, every area is different, and so that's one of the things I know they're doing here. I've seen other places. For example, my home county, New Jersey, the police, in conjunction with the prosecutor's office, because that's the way they run things. That's just because the way they run things there, and that's fine. So what they've done is they've gone out and gotten maps of like every school. So in the event that there's an incident, one, they can train without being in the school. Two, if there's an incident, in some of these large high schools and stuff of that nature, they know the grounds because they've got it computerized already. So, and I'm sure there's other things once they have that computerized record of that they can do to start securing areas. And I'm sure there's recommendations that they've made if they're doing community policing to do things. But again, I said every area is different how they deal with it, as long as they're dealing with it together.
Right, because that's the key, making that team.
Making that team, yeah. And as part of the police, for example, when they're walking in town and, the guy says, I had these two teams buy tons of fertilizer here. You go, fertilizer. Hey, I've seen that before. Wonder why. Let's check this out. So again, part of that whole team effort of a town saying, no, so literally, this ain't happening in my town. Making that sort of effort for it to occur. And that's where, we all can get involved in going to, in encouraging our police when we see this going on, saying, hey, my kid goes to that school, my daughter goes to that school, whatever. I hear you guys are in there. That's great. We like that. Fantastic. Thank you. Or, you're the business person in town they come to and you say, I see that. That's really great. I'm feeling so much better. Thank you. Give them that the encouragement. I bet you they're going to do more.
So what's the best way for people out there to get in touch with the Workplace Violence Prevention Institute?
So there's two ways. You can go to the website, and it's long and slow. It's workplaceviolencepreventioninstitute.org. Now, I'm telling you, it's a slow loading website for whatever reason. And I know if you're like me, if it takes more than a nanosecond or 3 seconds to load, we ain't going there. We're not going to stay there. Fine. And I said, for whatever reason, it's a slow loading thing. You don't want to deal with a slow loading thing, send me an email and I'll get you the information. So I'm also not as fast in email, but I'm one of the last vestiges of people on AOL. But I heard somebody tell me that the last people on AOL are probably the same number of people using the Netflix mail package, as well to get their their movies in a package by mail as opposed to downloading. I'm not one of those people, but at any rate, they can send me an email. email address is smslawfirm, smslawfirm at AOL.com. And they just put workplace violence, and I'll get them the information or what have you. As well, we got people from, I'm telling you, from parts of the country towns I've never heard of, which is great. Getting involved and trying to take, this to their town, to their county, to their area, to slowly but surely, I think it's going to be a grassroots effort of where everybody's helping each other. And again, different towns are going to do different things, but if we're all in this together, we can go a long way to preventing, this sort of craziness in the world.
Right. Yeah. And I bet you'd rather hear from these towns you've never heard of, as opposed to, oh, you're the town I just saw in the news because something happened there.
So that's been sort of my pitch to people. I said, I don't want to be the town in the news, but I'll tell you a true story. So living here in Palm Beach County, we had to live through the butterfly ballot, election some years back. While that was going on, so a couple weeks afterwards, I was in another town in Florida. I had a hearing, and I had to stay overnight in some town. So I check in, I go to the hotel elevator, I get in, and a guy walks in right behind me. I hold the door open for him. I ask him what floor. I hit it. And he says to me, look at that. It staggers. It goes 1 here, and then 2 across, and then 3 on the other side, and 4 across. And he goes, I bet that must be real difficult for people of Palm Beach County to figure out. Now, I had 2 answers to tell him, which was either A, I'm from Palm Beach County, or B, like totally ignoring and go, yeah, I guess it is. And I chose the latter. It was late. I was tired. I didn't want him to feel bad. I didn't want to get in an argument with him. So I said, I imagine so. So you're right. You don't want to be from that. You don't want to be from that town where it happens from. That was a joke. This is more serious. Oh yeah, Parkland. What's that like? And even now, I'm telling. I'm later on. I look like it, but I got to get to the gym, and the gym is 2 miles from Parkland. And I bet you coming out of there, I'm going to see at least one car with a MSD Strong sticker on it, or some reference to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas or Parkland schools or something of that nature, because it affects people. It's still in the news.
Sure.
It's still affecting people. Listen, the families. I'm not talking about them. I'm just talking about the regular people who go about their everyday thing. In the area, it's still in effect.
Do you have any sort of grand vision or hopeful outcome of where maybe the United States is a few years from now, that tells you that workplace and school place violence we've really done something around prevention? Like, how would you know if things are working?
So in the workplace arena, there's the nursing industry is by far and away the leader in workplace violence. The nurses have a very tough position, and a lot of them in hospitals have got, irritable patients, whatever, and they're getting attacked all which ways. And there have been a couple of movements afoot with regards to some states and some institutions of trying to reduce that. That's going to be an interesting thing to see, because that is like off the charts, and hopefully that does things. I'm concerned about the rest of us, because it seems to be, from a media perspective, we're focused on the active shooting thing once it occurs. It becomes a big media news things and what have you, but we don't talk about the prevention of it. That concerns me tremendously. And companies take the idea, as you pointed out at the beginning, I didn't think, it never happens here, never happens here, never happens. Oh, it does. It happens. It happens in the strangest of places that they never expected to. We had a shooting last year in an upscale mall in Coral Gables outside of Miami, where people were eating lunch at a restaurant in Nordstrom's, and they're witnessing SWAT teams come in. Now, if you could be sitting there having lunch on a Saturday afternoon at Nordstrom's, and there's an employee coming back with a gun to shoot and kill 2 people next door to you, if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere. Or some of them have been like, and like the same week that happened, there's a shooting in Texas where somebody killed a former employee, and these were not just nurses. This was hospice care people. I mean, come on, hospice care people. You would think the angels are taking care of people in the last. You'd think they can happen there. They can happen anywhere. And unfortunately, it continues. The school one, I think, is going to have to reach ahead some way. How many more mass incidents can we see as a country? I think that's unfortunately going to have to reach ahead some way, somehow, before we get a good handle on this. I just, again, hope that there aren't, many more. But, there's still people wanting to emulate these shooters, terrorists, whatever you want to call them, perpetrators out there. And unless we start preventing it, we can put up all the metal detectors in the world. It's not going to stop bombs coming in,
Right.
or stuff of that nature. That's the scary thing. We just had an incident here in Palm Beach County this past week at a preseason football game. There was a shooting outside that went on where, like, they evacuated everybody. And they've been very careful to say it's not a school shooting because they don't want to use that term to scare people. Now, it's a school football game just outside the ticket window and stuff of that nature. To me and you, that sound like that, but you understand from their perspective why they're not saying, that it was, because we're so scared of that term. So, unfortunately, it's prevention's the in conjunction with hardening the schools is going to go a long way. And the more that we deal with prevention, the more we get together on a level and say, no, we don't want this in our backyard, literally. That's what's, I think, going to drive things.
Cool. So prevention is possible in all these scenarios, and it comes from the community, the entire company coming together as a team. Some set education on the warning signs, being vigilant, being alert.
Right. And it comes from when the company's taking the mindset of it can't happen here. Well, there's no prevention that's ever going to occur at that point in time.
Yeah.
When they wake up and say it can happen here, what steps do I need to take? Congratulations. When that epiphany has gone off, now that we can start taking actions to start, preventing things from occurring. Schools have realized it because, they're government entities in some sense. So there's going to be insurance. There's going to be a bunch of things that they're going to have to deal with. So now there's going to be pressure on them to sort of deal with that. But again, the prevention is going to come, I believe, is going to come from a team effort from just people, just like, you and me going to their people in the town going, hey, what are we doing about this?
Yeah.
Or you're doing something about it. Congrats. Keep doing what you're doing about it.
Right,
Something like that.
Yeah. So communication.
Communication, the carrot or the stick, one way or the other.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So the most dangerous thing, if you hear this, like, it can never happen here, that's going to be almost your first warning sign that we really need to take action then, if that's kind of the mindset.
I wrote before about somebody who happened to be in Baltimore where the guy says, it can't happen here. I said, you must have missed the incident 5 years ago where it did happen. Yeah. This is your second shot already. Yeah. Literally second shot. But you're right. It can happen everywhere, unfortunately. Listen, Parkland was rated one of the safest towns in the country. It's like one of the leading schools in the country. It can happen there. It's the least expected place that you see somebody go in and shoot anybody, let alone go into a school and shoot people. It's not the Wild West. It's not an urban center. It's a beautiful, beautiful town. It's got a lot of affluent homes. It's got a lot of wide open, undeveloped areas, a lot of horse country and stuff of that nature there as well. In fact, our family there's a couple of parks there that we love going to. And my wife and I want to get away from it. We just go to Parkland and drive because there's nothing for a lot of stretches. It's really beautiful. It is the last place that you'd expect to see something like what occurred on February 14th occur.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Stuart, and all the work you're doing with the Institute. And it's sad that this conversation needs to happen, but I'm also glad that it is.
It really is. I firstly appreciate very much you having me on. You're absolutely right. It's really sad. I was talking with Kathleen Bonchik, our president, yesterday. I was saying, remember the Morgan Freeman movie Lean on Me? We went into Patterson East Side, and being from New Jersey, I know that Patterson East was a very rough school. And he did like radical things like block the doors so guns couldn't get in. And that was radical at the time. Now it's like, you mean you don't keep the doors locked and anybody can walk in? So you're right. It is sad that has occurred, but our first thing is to make sure that our kids are safe. Our kids are safe. Everybody in the schools are safe. Parents, educators, staff, administrators, teachers as well. We've got a duty to keep them safe, and we've got to do what we can. And prevention's the one thing that I really think is going to stop, these mass things. The kid with the knife, the kid with the gun, that's what metal detectors are for. That's what the school bus cameras are for and stuff of that nature. But the other stuff, the big stuff, that's prevention, and that's going to be a team effort, and I think we can do it.
Cool.
Just hopefully we just don't get too many more of these before we do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we don't need any more. Everyone should be able to act on prevention today. Like,
right.
Nothing to wait
Correct.
for.
Absolutely correct.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Stuart. And
You're very welcome.
Wherever you're checking this out, we'll put in the show notes on thegoodmenproject.com or on realmenfeel.org. Links to the Workplace Violence Prevention Institute. Also Stuart's email if you want to reach out to him personally. But yeah, don't just sit back. Take some action. Make your community more aware. For more of the conversations most men aren't having, but certainly should be, visit thegoodmenproject.com. Wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast, please subscribe, please share, give a rating, review. We'd love to hear from you. And again, visit realmenfeel.org. Check us out on Facebook, send us feedback, and we'll talk to you again soon. Be well.
Thank you for listening to Real Men Feel. Reach out to us at realmenfeel@gmail.com. Learn more about Andy Grant at theandygrant.com. Until next time, visit realmenfeel.org or the Real Men Feel Facebook group and share what you thought of this episode. Please give this podcast a review on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you are discovering Real Men Feel. Visit goodmenproject.com for more of the conversations no one else is having.